Okay, here we go. Yokoso washitare. Welcome back to another fantastic story. Well, to be honest, like some of the previous stories, this one's not the most exciting of all the stories, but I think it's still actually really good. There's a lot you can glean from it. So, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Once upon a time. Ima wa mukashi. I keep forgetting to do that in the beginning of my videos. Ima wa mukashi, once upon a time. There was a toneri, and toneri means something akin to a guardsman, an imperial guard. A man who is really good at fighting, who is employed by the emperor, the imperial family, and the nobility. These were the professional policemen of the capital, if you will. They were usually really good at fighting. They usually had swords. They usually had bows, because bows were more important than swords at this time. But this toneri, this guardsman's name was Haruchika. And Haruchika was a very athletic guy. He was a young guy. He was very skilled. He was particularly well known for being really good at kemari, which is like a game that the ancient Japanese nobility used to play. And it's kind of like hacky sack. I mentioned this in my Prince Shotoku Taishi video. What they would do is they would take a ball and they would kick it. And you'd have to keep the ball in the air without using your hands. And usually you would pass it around amongst some other people in the circle. There would be a handful of noblemen standing. There'd be a handful of noblemen around in a circle playing kemari. And he was really good at that. It's not actually relevant to the story, but it's in here, so I'm including it. But one day, this Haruchika was hanging around the capital. I don't know exactly where. It says the Nochi no Machi, which means the town in the back, which again, I don't exactly remember what that means. I believe it's somewhere within the imperial grounds, but I can't be entirely sure. Suffice to say, he's in the capital, and specifically, he's at a well in the capital. And he's just kind of big chillin', you know. There's the well, and it's got the barrier surrounding it. Usually when you think of a European well, generally is going to have like a stone wall around it, because the well itself is just a big hole in the ground out of which water comes. But then you've got the defensive barrier to help keep people from falling into it. But anyway, Haruchika is hanging out by this well, and he's casually leaning up against the wall of this well, just chillin', when, being a young, red-blooded man that he is, he noticed that there were some ladies present. And there were a lot of ladies, too. And again, being young and red-blooded, he decided that he wanted to riz them a little bit, is the word that the kids use today, from what I'm being told. And he wanted to show off for him a little bit. Show that he was a skilled, athletic dude who could impress people and was just a really cool guy. So, he pulls out his sword. Well, he doesn't pull out his sword. He's got the sword, but it's in the scabbard. It's in the saya. But there's a thing that goes in a sword scabbard, and it took me so long to figure this out because I didn't understand what it was. I had to look up. Here's the challenge with translating old Japanese stuff, really old Japanese stuff. It talks about the kogai. He takes the kogai from the scabbard. I'm like, what's a kogai? So I look it up and it goes, oh, it's this thing that gets put in this part of a scabbard. And I'm like, what's this part of the scabbard? Oh, well, it's this thing that you use to do this other thing. Well, what's this other thing that you do with it? Well, it's this thing that you have to do this thing, and then I have to look that word up, and it's just this non-stop sidetrack into a bunch of stuff that I have no idea what one thing means. In order to just understand X, I need to understand Y. And in order to understand Y, I need to understand Z. And in order to understand Z, I need to just understand alpha. And it just keeps going. It's like those quests in video games where you have this deceptively simple task, like just get to the other town, but halfway through you get jumped by bandits who carry you to a bandit camp, and then they put you in jail, and then because you're in jail, in order to get out of jail, you have to make friends with like a fellow jailed person, but in order to make friends with them, you have to do some sort of fetch quest where you wander around and you find some sort of specific item, so you got to get the item to make friends with the guy who can help you get out of jail, so you can get back on the road to initially just get to the other town that you were trying to get to. That is to say, studying ancient languages is kind of annoying. The only reason I do it is because I love it. But anyway, he takes this thing, this kogai is what it's called. It's like a stick, a small stick that you stick in this one part of the scabbard of your sword, ostensibly to hold something, fasten something in place. I don't exactly remember. I do remember one of the uses for it is it was a head scratcher, and in one of the sources that I was looking up, that's what they call it. It's what do they call it? Hold on, one second. But they call it a kamigaki. Kami meaning hair or head, and kaki meaning scratch, so a head scratcher. But anyway, he takes this stick, this kogai, this thing that was stuck in his sword that you can use to scratch your head, but he takes it and he lays it on his finger. Specifically, it says his nail, but he lays it on his finger, and he's balancing it. See if I can do it with my calligraphy brush. Look at that. He does it on the nail. Let's see if I can do it. My calligraphy brush. Okay, that's really awkward, but you see how I'm doing it? But so he does this, and then he sticks his finger out over the top of the well. And what he does is he... Oh, this is actually tiring my finger out. Holy crap. But he takes this, and he throws it up in the air, and he flips it around, and then catches it on his finger again. I'm not entirely sure how he does that, but he okay, yeah, I can't do it. But he does this with his finger out over the well, and he's flipping this thing over and over and over and catching it without, actually grabbing it. He's just demonstrating how skilled he is. And he does this about 40 or 50 times. And everybody around sees this and is very impressed. Crowd gathers around him, and they're watching how skilled this dude is at, flipping his stick around. And probably the girls are swooning over him. They're so impressed. They're giggling. They're laughing. I mean, the fascinating thing about this is it demonstrates just how much like normal people these people were. Young guy, very skilled, wants to show off for some ladies, and of course a bunch of people gather around, and everybody's having a good time, and everybody's very interested. It's just normal stuff. It's except now we do all this crap on YouTube where we have trick shots and stuff. Now we can see it everywhere, and it's not just people in one small city. However, there's a wrench that gets thrown into this. Because while we have the phrase, whatever you think you're good at, there's an 8-year-old Asian kid that's better than you, in ancient Japan, it was almost the opposite. No matter how good you think you were, there was some old person who could make you look like you had 2 left feet. Is that a phrase? Or just put you totally to shame. Again, I can't come up with any more clever ways of saying that. But so, while our boy Haruchika is entertaining everybody, mostly the girls, because that's who you wanted to entertain mostly, but he's doing his thing, and he gets done, and this old lady comes out of the crowd, and she's just grinning, a smiley, peacefully, harmless old woman, and she comes hobbling up to him, and she says in her old granny voice, "You, sir, are a really, really skilled young boy." Okay. That's bad acting, I know, but bear with it. Back in my day, there were people who could do so many things just like this. Oh, those were good days, I tell you what. Here, let me show you what we did when we were young. And this old lady then pulls a pin, a needle. She had a needle stuck in one of her sleeves, but she pulls a needle out. And with this needle, it's still got a thread attached to it too, just to add to the complexity of it all. But she takes this needle and she does the same thing. She sticks it on her finger, she sticks it out over the well, and she flips it and catches it again 40 or 50 times, it says. Now, I can balance this if I practice, if I can, But with a needle, something so small that it's going to get affected by the wind. It's this teeny tiny little thing. How are you supposed to balance this on your nail? On your nail. It's not even her full finger. It's her nail. And it's a needle stuck with a thread that's just going to help make things get tangled. So now you got to be extra accurate with it. But this old woman just comes in with this needle and does the exact same thing that this young strapping man just did and totally puts him to shame. And of course the crowd sees this and they get even more excited. Now there's whooping and hooting and hollering. Actually, it doesn't say that there's hooting and hollering. It just says everybody was very impressed. But, there probably was some, whoa, oh my goodness, Granny, that's insane. Something along those lines. And, and when Granny is done, she just quietly and calmly puts her needle away and hobbles off to go do whatever she was going to do. She made sure that the youngins, the whippersnappers, understood where exactly they stood in the social hierarchy. And Haruchika, having been thoroughly shown up, all he could do was take his his little head scratcher stick thing, put it back in the sheath of his sword, and wander on off. Just saunter on with his head bowed, having been totally shown up by an old lady. And of course, this was a very rare thing indeed. This isn't something that normally happened. An interesting little amusing pastime that came about. And thus is it said that in ancient times, even in regards to seemingly pointless, trivial skills and abilities, there were many who were exceptionally gifted and practiced in their crafts. And that's the story. One point of commentary, because this is something that you'll see crop up in a lot of these stories, is that the ancient Japanese had a very special reverence and a very special, almost worshipful, religious view of the past. To them, for whatever reason, they thought the past was like this semi-magical, mythical age where some of the best people lived, the most skilled, most amazing individuals to ever walk the earth. These were the people that set up their society, and were it not for these people, nothing could ever get done. And for them, they never liked comparing themselves to the ancients, because it's one thing to be skilled in a society that just allows you to be skilled in a society. Like you're in a society that already lets you do certain things. Everything, you've already been set up for success, so who cares? But back in the day, the people who had to create these societies, who had to create these systems and come up with these ideas, they were purveyors of knowledge. Like the only thing that made it to their time was the best of the best. And so they had this very reverential, deferential view of the past. And they always talk about how people back in the day were so much better at things. They were so much better at music. They were so much better at art. Like I literally just got done reading a portion of the Tale of Genji where Genji is talking to a bunch of people about music and talking about how back in the day there were some real musical geniuses, but today we have some good players, but nobody who's like amazing like they were back in the day. And you know, people are people. People make mistakes. People in the past were not saints. People in the past were not angels. They were not perfect. They had their own problems, and many of the problems that we have now, or many of the things that we have now, were a direct response to the problems that our ancestors had as well. That being said though, if you want to look at it as from like a cultural Darwinist perspective, I just came up with that word, but a cultural Darwinian perspective or something, usually only the best stuff survives. So if you look at a lot of the things that we have and that can be traced directly back to our ancestors and to an older civilization, usually the only reason we still have some of these things is because they actually work and they're really good ideas to keep around. So that is all to say, you know what, the Japanese, I think they had something right with this deferential, reverential treatment of the ancients. That's partly why I'm so into ancient Japanese culture and literature and history. I think there's a lot we can learn from the past. That being said, it is also very important to keep a critical eye out on things, to remember that these were just people. They weren't infallible. They weren't the end-all be-all of existence. They gave us some really cool things to inherit. They also gave us some not great things to inherit, you know? So that is just to say, I like old stuff, and I can understand why the Japanese did too. So that's going to be it for this video. Ito katejike no koso haberi kere. If you want to give the video a like, by all means. This is a labor of love on my part, so whether you like it or not, I'm probably still going to make these anyway. That's not the right thing to motivate people. But if you also want to subscribe too, I'm done a pretty good job so far at making sure I get these things out weekly. So please, feel free to subscribe. Anyway, that's going to be it. Thank you again. And I will see you in the next one. Sayonara.